Genevieve Deveraux stepped slowly through the slender carved wooden door, the faint scent of silk mingling with the aroma of lavender tea in the cozy space of Belle Étoffe. The shop stood on a cobblestone street in the heart of Lyon, its exterior still preserving the 17th-century French architecture with tall glass windows divided into panes by ornate wrought iron frames. She allowed herself a small smile, her deep-set eyes sparkling with excitement at the thought of the family tea party to be held at the Deveraux Château at the end of the week. In her hand was the invitation, a soirée-themed fragrance of Eastern blooms, and Genevieve very much wanted a meticulously hand-embroidered Qipao to present before her guests. Calista Moreau bent over her sewing machine, focusing as the needle pierced through the creamy silk. Her slender hands moved like dancers as she gently pulled the thread, delicately stitching the swirling lines of peony blossoms on the hem. The rhythmic click of the sewing machine, mixed with the refined scent of the silk and the faint smell of aged wood, created an atmosphere that felt both classic and warm. Calista looked up when the door jingled, her dark brown eyes brightening with curiosity whenever a new customer entered. Genevieve offered a soft greeting, her voice gentle yet laced with the pride of a woman who had traveled the world. The young woman behind the counter wore a modernized Qipao, elegant yet imbued with the confident air of a shop owner. Calista rose, walking over to offer a proper nod. "Madam, please come in and have a look. We've just completed several special Qipao designs for this weekend's soirée." Her tone was gentle, yet her eyes revealed the pride of a truly gifted couture artisan. Genevieve lifted the Rouge Passion Qipao, a gown of deep wine red silk embroidered in gold thread with creamy jade green peony blossoms. She ran her hand over each embroidered petal and nodded her approval. "This one is exquisite. Calista Moreau, is it? I've heard your name spoken highly in the couture circles of Paris and Lyon." Calista bowed her head slightly and smiled. "Yes, madam. I am honored by your praise." Genevieve then delivered a series of detailed requirements. "I need this custom tailored to my exact measurements. The silk must be imported from the Ivory Coast, perfectly tensioned, with no creases or breaks in the fabric. The golden embroidery should be 24K thread outlining extremely fine floral details, with exceptional durability so I can wear it throughout the evening without needing constant adjustments." Calista's eyes gleamed with pride as she jotting down every detail. Madame Deveraux left her phone number and added, "It must be finished in 1 week, I'm in a hurry. And if you have the chance, invite my son here. He's often busy with the racetrack, but if I mention me, he'll come right away." Meanwhile, Lucien Deveraux sat in the changing room at the Grand Circuit de Lyon racetrack, his fingers tracing the small scratch on the side of his blazing red race car. The test run for the upcoming 24 Hours of Le Mans was tense and chaotic, but his mind was not entirely focused. He wondered why his mother, a woman always meticulous in every detail, would insist he come to Belle Étoffe. He knew she only wanted his help with such frivolous, fashionable matters as selecting a Qipao, while he was supposed to be focused on winning races. His phone's old screen blinked with a missed call from Genevieve, and Lucien sighed, nodding to himself, "Well, only mother could make me do something like this." Driving his glossy black BMW M4 down the narrow street, he spotted the white-painted wooden doors with the slender script Belle Étoffe and raised an eyebrow in curiosity. He took a deep breath before stepping inside. Even before his foot fully crossed the threshold, his eyes carefully scanned every corner, as though he were accustomed to fans jostling around him for an autograph. But today, he didn't care about public opinion, he simply wanted to know why his mother had summoned him here. Under the warm golden light, the sewing machine clicked to a halt as Calista noticed the tall figure behind her. She paused briefly, and in that instant, Lucien felt his heart skip a beat. Her face was radiant, her long black hair spilling naturally around her slender neck. The ivory-colored Qipao hugged her slim waist, modest yet exuding a soft, noble elegance. The stillness in Calista's posture made it impossible for Lucien to look away. He wondered who this petite woman could be, and why a single glance had disoriented him so completely. Calista gave a gentle smile when she heard his footsteps. "Hello, sir. How may I help you?" Her voice held a hint of surprise mingled with courtesy. Lucien inclined his head slightly. "I'm looking for my mother, Genevieve Deveraux." Calista gracefully gestured to a wooden chair beside a small tea table. "Your mother was here a moment ago, placing her Qipao order. I've taken all her measurements and will have it ready by Saturday." Lucien frowned slightly at this news, but a strange feeling simmered in his chest. He glanced at his mother, who was trying on various Qipao samples, muttering to herself, "I really don't understand her." When Genevieve saw her son, her face lit up with joy. "Lucien, I asked you to come here to see the samples. This is Calista Moreau, the shop owner." She introduced Calista and gestured toward her. Lucien rose and approached. "Hello," Calista said, bowing slightly with a natural smile. Lucien nodded in return, striving to appear composed, though his blue eyes betrayed undeniable curiosity. He picked up the Rouge Passion Qipao, running his fingers over the smooth silk and pressing his lips together. "It's so soft," he murmured in a warm, husky voice that took Calista by surprise. This was genuine admiration from a celebrated racer often featured in glowing headlines. Genevieve watched them converse with satisfaction. She smiled inwardly, having achieved her goal, allowing her son to see in person the woman who would dress her. As Lucien and Calista discussed minor adjustments, the sleeve length and a tasteful side slit, afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, catching on the red silk so it gleamed like jewels. In that moment, Lucien gazed at Calista with a tenderness he didn't even know he possessed. Calista caught his affectionate look, closed her eyes briefly, and silently wondered, could this be love at first sight? Her heart began to beat more rapidly. Though brief, their encounter planted a peculiar sensation in both of them. Lucien left the shop with his mother's measurements in hand, but his mind was filled with the image of Calista Moreau's graceful form. For her part, after closing up the shop, Calista remained silent as she thought about the young man with deep blue eyes and a warm yet intriguingly distant voice. Neither could have guessed that this fateful Qipao would launch a journey filled with challenges and sweetness, toward a love neither had ever imagined. In the days following their fateful meeting, Calista Moreau devoted herself wholeheartedly to organizing a small exhibition at Belle Étoffe titled Qipao Culture in the Heart of Europe. She designed the posters by hand, printed flyers, and posted images on social media to attract visitors. The cafe next door kindly agreed to let her hang a promotional banner, and her two assistants enthusiastically helped arrange the displays. Calista spent entire afternoons arranging modernized Qipao designs that blended French and Asian styles among fresh lavender bouquets, creating a warm and refined atmosphere. Meanwhile, Lucien Deveraux faced a new complication. At the Grand Circuit de Lyon racetrack, a rival driver had deliberately cut his brakes, nearly causing Lucien to skid into the guardrail. The engine roared as dust billowed around him. He hurried into the pit and, looking frantic, jumped down to inspect the front tires like a madman. His technical team had to check the entire system with keen focus, while Lucien gritted his teeth, slammed the brake once more, and then sped off straight for Belle Étoffe in search of a moment of peace. Driving his sleek black car along the cobblestone street, his heart raced like never before, until he pushed open the shop door and the soft hum of the sewing machine began to soothe his tension. Calista saw him appear suddenly, and his unfamiliar gaze caused her to freeze as if entranced for a split second. She invited him to sit at the tea table and poured him a cup of warm lotus tea sweetened with a touch of honey, then placed it before him. Lucien took a deep breath, his eyes half-lidded as he watched the tea leaves drift in the gentle steam. His muscles relaxed, and he managed a faint, dreamy smile. "Thank you, Calista." His voice was deep and warm, carrying fatigue with a calm undertone that held Callista's gaze. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up a petit four and offered him a taste. Its almond sweetness and creamy filling seemed to reach every corner of his palate. Lucien softly nodded in appreciation. Amid the soft footsteps of an assistant guiding other customers to try on Qipao, Calista carefully smoothed a fold in the fabric, silently reminding herself, I must maintain this level of excellence for the opening. Seeing Lucien sitting pensively by the window as the setting sun filtered through the lavender outside, she realized that this proud racer's heart was beginning to soften. In that warm atmosphere, they both forgot the clamor of the outside world. Calista forgot the rumors swirling around Lucien's heart, and Lucien forgot the pressure of the racetrack. There was only the image of the petite girl in Qipao serenely making tea and offering him comfort. As dusk settled over the street, Calista and Lucien exchanged sincere questions, sharing their dreams. She wished to bring traditional Asian attire closer to the hearts of the French, while he confessed his desire to rediscover joy outside the roar of engines and the pressure to win. Under the venerable eaves of Belle Étoffe, their two hearts began to beat in tandem, embarking on a journey to pursue a budding love, despite the many trials and challenges that lay ahead. In the days following the relatively successful Qipao culture in the Heart of Europe exhibition, which drove a surge of customers into the shop, Calista Moreau remained busy running Belle Étoffe with her two trusted assistants, Louise and Etienne. Each morning she would wander the luxurious Rue de la République in Lyon seeking inspiration for her next collection, then stop by Les Halles Market to select fresh blooms to enhance the shop's atmosphere. The exhibition's success caught the attention of the gossip tabloids, and dozens of fashion magazines published glowing articles praising her unique Franco-Asian fusion style. Yet there were inevitably snide comments. Calista is riding the coattails of racing star Lucien Deveraux to grab publicity. The night before one such piece went viral online, Calista lay awake until dawn, worried that these rumors might turn away potential clients. Across town, Lucien Deveraux was still entrenched in his grueling daily training routine with the Grand Circuit team, the roar of engines and smell of burning oil providing the soundtrack to his life. That day, he received 3 urgent calls in a row from his grandfather, Henri Deveraux, who had caught wind of the online chatter. Seated in the large conference room at Deveraux Motors headquarters, Henri's gaze grew icy as he scolded Lucien for tarnishing the family name by consorting with a seamstress. I hear she just held an exhibition, and the press is fawning over her, yet it's all speculation that she's merely exploiting your name. What are you going to do to preserve the family's honor? Their voices clashed like colliding pistons. Lucien took a deep breath. Grandfather, I love Calista sincerely. She is not using me. Henri furrowed his brow and replied coldly, don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. Focus on your racing career first, and worry about other matters later. Our family does not lack prestigious alliances. I want you to pursue a strategic marriage, not daydream about a Qipao dressmaker. Despite the pressure from his family, Lucien remained steadfast in defending the woman he loved. He set aside his afternoon training session and drove to Belle Étoffe unannounced. His sleek black car glided past the cobblestone streets as the overcast Lyon sky seemed to mirror his unsettled mood. Stepping into the boutique, he heard Calista's gentle voice guiding a customer through the fittings, her warmth immediately soothing his tension. He moved to the tea table, planted his hand on the cover of the portfolio containing her designs, and looked at her intently. Calista, I skipped practice this afternoon to come see you. Calista paused in her work, taken aback by the weary strength etched on Lucien's face. She smiled softly and replied in a quiet voice, I know your grandfather is displeased, but I truly want to develop this Franco-Asian fusion project with you. The sincerity shining in her eyes eased Lucien's heart. In the days that followed, rumors concerning their relationship only grew more intense. Some local journalists even went to the shop to interview Calista about her romance with the racing driver. On more than one occasion, they hid cameras in a corner just to capture footage of her delicately handling each stitch, then set it to dramatic music to sensationalize the story. Calista had to devote additional time to press conferences to clarify everything and maintain her professional image. She skillfully answered, "Lucien is simply a very good friend. I deeply appreciate his interest in and support for this Franco-Chinese Qipao line. There is no question of me using his name for publicity." Nevertheless, certain magazines continued to pounce, writing malicious articles claiming Calista was taking advantage of the driver's fame to promote her brand. This wave of negative press not only stressed her out but also forced her grandmother, Camille Chevalier, to spend her days manning the shop in Calista's stead, shielding her from scandal. Still, Calista refused to let herself be defeated. Early the next morning, she laced up her sneakers, grabbed her portable sewing machine with her two assistants, and took a small bus to a distant neighborhood where Lyon's Asian community resided. There, she teamed up with a group of traditional silk scarf artisans to hold a free traditional Qipao sewing workshop for the children of local Chinese and Vietnamese families. Under the pale sunlight, her hands moved deftly as she taught the needlework techniques. The children watched eagerly, their eyes bright with excitement at every stitch she made on the vivid jade green fabric. Their innocent faces helped her forget the pressures of the outside world, leaving only the simple joy of preserving cultural heritage. At the racetrack, Lucien learned that the road to a Le Mans victory was growing more treacherous when a new rival emerged, Marco Alessi, an Italian driver known for his reckless maneuvers and dirty tactics. During a practice run, Marco intentionally cut in front of Lucien, trying to force him off the track. At the same time, Lucien received news that Calista was being cornered by a group of reporters outside her boutique, cameras rolling as they bombarded her with questions about their relationship. Looking at the image of Calista, her face soaked in sweat, tears streaming down her cheeks as she tried to snap a photo of the Belle Étoffe sign, Lucien's anger flared. He tossed his helmet onto the garage floor and bolted from his car, racing like a madman back to the shop. When his car screeched to a halt in front of Belle Étoffe, Lucien stormed out in furious haste, charging toward the swarm of reporters. "That's enough. Get out of here, now." His voice thundered down the quiet street like a clap of lightning. Startled, the journalists scattered, while Calista, having witnessed the scene, ran forward to grab his hand. She choked up, saying, "You shouldn't have done that. I don't want you to get in trouble for me." Lucien bent down, his lips trembling. "When I saw them filming you without your consent, I couldn't stay silent." Tears streamed down Calista's face, but her conviction remained firm. "You need to stay focused on your racing. Let me handle this. I'll be fine." 2 days after the incident, Lucien refocused on the track with newfound resolve. Meanwhile, Calista and her grandmother, Camille, quietly revamped the space at the back of the shop, displaying photographs from the workshop under a simple caption, "Preserving Tradition, Sewing with Love." Though the caption never mentioned Lucien's name, fans understood its meaning. They would continue to follow their individual passions and not be swayed by public opinion. Between them, though at times they seemed pulled apart, the bond they shared still smoldered beneath the surface. Family pressures, media scrutiny, and rivals on the track were only the beginning of a long journey ahead, a journey where love and steadfast belief would be tested day after day. The next morning, Lyon's light sun bathed the leaves along Rue Mercier in a warm glow. Calista Moreau and Lucien Deveraux had arranged to meet at the central tram station before setting off on a day trip to the lavish Provence region, where lavender was in full bloom like an endless purple sea. On the old yet neatly maintained bus, Calista sat by the window, her eyes sparkling as she gazed at the fields stretching to the horizon. Beside her, Lucien held her hand lightly, beads of sweat on his forehead dampening his black leather jacket from that morning's training session. Calista gently brushed his hair back, concern softening her features. Upon arrival, a red dirt path led them into a vast lavender grove, its heady scent carried on the breeze, making the blossoms sway as though waving in greeting. Together they strolled through the rows, each step leaving an imprint in the fine sand. Calista told Lucien about her dream of making Franco-Asian fusion Qipao an emblem of European fashion, while Lucien shared his longing to find peace beyond the roar of engines after each resounding victory on the track. Amid the violet expanse, Lucien reached into his jacket pocket and delicately took out a silver ring engraved with the word espoir, hope. He placed it on Calista's finger. "You are my hope, my inspiration to return to the track and continue my life." Calista's eyes welled with tears as she promised to keep her faith and help him cultivate the collaboration between Deveraux Motors and Belle Étoffe by opening a branch in Paris. At midday, they stopped at a small roadside bistro owned by a Vietnamese immigrant chef, who served a one-of-a-kind French-Vietnamese banh mi sandwich. Calista urged Lucien to try it, and the two chatted fondly about family. Calista spoke of her grandmother, Camille, who had supported her since her mother passed away early, while Lucien candidly shared the pressure from his grandfather, Henri, who always wanted him to marry into a more aristocratic family. Before leaving the bistro, Lucien lingered for a few extra minutes by the kitchen, watching the chef skillfully craft his sauces, and Calista teased, "If you weren't a racer, you'd make a great chef." Lucien chuckled softly, took Calista's hand, and said, "I do enjoy cooking, but cooking for you would be my greatest honor." In the afternoon, they drove through olive-covered hills and stopped at an old farmhouse to meet a local Franco-Asian fashion designer. The new friend immediately expressed a desire to help Calista organize a small fashion show in Paris, with Lucien serving as a model for the Qipao. This news set their hearts racing once more, making up for the tension of the previous days. As twilight fell, their convoy reached a roadside tavern where warm lamplight glowed on ancient stone walls. Lucien draped his arm around Calista as they walked beneath blooming olive trees, and he whispered softly, "I promise that after Le Mans, we'll go to Paris together, open the new branch, and show the world that the Qipao isn't just an East Asian heritage but also an international pride." Calista said nothing, merely nodded, her eyes reflecting both hope and a vow to be by his side forever. On the return trip to Lyon, they compiled a to-do list, finalize the Fusion collection designs and prepare for the meeting with Deveraux Motors investors. Though they knew the road ahead held many challenges, family, media, racing, and business, their hearts, under the gentle glow of the setting sun, made a promise to face everything together. A storm of bad news struck on the very morning Lucien was preparing to leave for Monza to test drive before the upcoming Grand Prix. As he was stepping out of the garage in his freshly pressed racing suit, he received a choked, urgent call from Aunt Camille, Calista's grandmother. Through tears, she told him that a small fire had broken out in the workshop behind Belle Étoffe. No one was injured, but some of the fabrics and sewing machines had been partially destroyed. In that instant, Lucien felt as though his heart was being squeezed. He raced across the street to a nearby café, grasping his phone and cradling Aunt Camille's hand. "Don't worry, Aunt Camille. I'll return immediately. Nothing is more important." Camille sobbed, "You have to come back to Lyon right away. Calista is in shock and utterly exhausted." All the pressure from the Deveraux family and the racing team, already weighing heavily upon him, was now compounded by concern for the young woman he cherished above all else. As Lucien sped through the streets once so closely linked to their love story, memories of the Provence outing flooded back, Calista's radiant smile under the golden sunshine, the fragrant steam rising from that French-Vietnamese banh mi kitchen, and the violet sunset over the lavender fields. He silently vowed never to let the woman he loved shoulder so much suffering again. When he finally arrived at Belle Étoffe, he saw smoke still drifting from the small back workshop. The acrid smell of burnt wood and fabric stung his eyes. Inside, Calista stood motionless beside the old sewing machine, its concrete base scorched, clutching a singed scrap of fabric. Upon spotting Lucien, she burst into tears, her face a mixture of worry and weariness. "You've come just in time, there's nothing left for me to do." Seeing her gaunt figure and the long black hair matted by tears shattered Lucien's breath. He dropped to his knees beside her, placed his hand on her shoulder, and whispered, "You will not lose your passion. We will rebuild everything from the ground up." As Calista accepted the white handkerchief he offered, her tears flowed unabated, tears born of grief over the loss yet comforted by his steadfast presence. In the days that followed, Belle Étoffe closed for a week while the workshop was repaired. Every morning, Calista, Aunt Camille, and the two assistants, Louise and Etienne, spent long hours clearing away the ashes and sorting through any partially salvageable fabric. The sewing machines lay silent, replaced by the monotonous sweep of brooms clearing thick layers of soot from the wooden floor. Meanwhile, the press seized upon the story of the famous racer-turning seamstress, casting fresh doubt on Calista's abilities. Rumors circulated that she was trying to cover up the fire to protect her brand's reputation. Calista read the malicious comments online and wondered whether she should abandon her dreams or continue forging ahead amid the ruin. Aunt Camille took her granddaughter's hand and said, "Take it one step at a time. As long as your perseverance never wavers, you will find the light again." Calista closed her eyes, drawing strength from her aunt's words and thinking back to Lucien's hand clasping hers outside that workshop door just yesterday. At the Monza Grand Prix track, Lucien was testing his car while also video calling the repair team. After each lap, he rushed back to his trailer to check for messages from Aunt Camille or updates from Calista. Everything felt tense. The chief engineer kept making last-minute adjustments to the front end of the car, worried Lucien might have to pull out midway through the event. Even as the starting grid was about to be set, Lucien's focus remained fractured. He couldn't stop picturing Calista's hollow-cheeked face and the scorched steel frame of the workshop. Moments before the official test run, he made a decision: he would abandon the session, ignoring his teammates' frantic shouts. Lucien sped to a quiet corner of the circuit, pulled out his phone, and video called Calista. On the screen, her face looked haggard but determined. In a husky voice, she said, "Don't worry about me. The workshop will be fine. I've already found someone to repair the roof and ordered a new batch of fabric. In a few days, I'll print posters to rally support from our customers." Hearing that, Lucien's heart warmed. He gripped his phone tightly. "I promise I'll be home right after Monza. We'll kick off our new project together. I won't let you shoulder this burden alone anymore." Calista nodded, tears blurring her vision as she forced a smile. "As long as you still believe in me, I won't give up." However, the challenges did not end there. News of Lucien abandoning the track to return to Lyon spread rapidly across the sports media. Fan sites exploded with outrage, accusing him of running away from his responsibilities and no longer caring about the team. An anonymous user on a Grand Prix forum even demanded that Lucien be stripped of his Monza entry, declaring he didn't deserve a place on the grid if his only concern was a seamstress. The weight of that public condemnation fell heavy on the heart of a driver accustomed to victory, leaving Lucien wondering if he could balance protecting his love and giving his all behind the wheel. He realized he had to make a choice. Staying with Calista would mean sacrificing his championship hopes, while focusing on racing again would leave Calista to face ruin alone. Amid these concerns, Calista refused to stay silent. She contacted a skilled artisan in Paris to restore the only remaining old sewing machine. She sent letters inviting friends and Lyon's Asian community to support a charity drive called Qipao of Hope, to be held in the small garden behind the workshop. But she did more. Late into the night, she sketched her Renaissance collection, each piece reborn with intricate white peony embroidery on blazing red silk, symbolizing faith and resilience. By dawn, they had printed and distributed dozens of posters, "Help the Qipao shine again." Each sheet urged customers to donate any leftover premium fabrics. Every purchase would contribute to a fund for a new machine. The slogan struck a chord, touching hearts across the city. On the day of the fundraiser, rain lashed the patched roof of the workshop, each drop pounding the tin so fiercely it threatened to drown out all sound. Calista, slick with rain, carried a thermos of hot tea to set on the small table by the doorway. Peering through the misted glass, she worried the downpour would drive everyone away. But as soon as the rain eased, a steady stream of people arrived: the flower vendor from Lay All Corner Market, a group of fashion school students bearing scraps of fabric, elderly Chinese neighbors carrying boxes of old silk, even complete strangers who had never set foot in Belle Étoffe but came to help after reading the news. In their eyes, Calista saw shared belief and longing. The seed of Belle Étoffe would sprout anew from these ashes. As the crowd filled the back courtyard, Calista fixed her gaze on each familiar face, her hands trembling with emotion. Fighting back a sob, she said, "Thank you all for your trust. We will rebuild this shop stronger than ever." Though her voice was soft, the resolve it carried moved her assistants and Aunt Camille to tears. When the event ended, the yard brimmed with vibrant rolls of fabric. Calista video called Lucien, who at that very moment stood in Monza's pit lane wearing a Deveraux Motors jacket. He saw her recounting the first fruits of the fundraiser, pride gleaming in his eyes. "You see, as long as people come together, Belle Étoffe will rise again." Lucien smiled, a swell of joy rising despite the lingering pang of guilt for being unable to stand by her side. Just then, his phone buzzed again. It was Henri Deveraux, speaking in a low, grave tone. "I hear the fundraiser was a modest success, but I'm still concerned about our family's reputation. If you do not immediately return to the track and prove yourself, do not blame me for cutting your sponsorship." Lucien stared at Monza's windswept sky, took a steadying breath, and answered calmly, "Grandfather, the race has never been everything to me. I must care for Calista and Belle Étoffe first." When the call ended, he knew the inner race between family obligations, his career, and his love for Calista would be long and arduous. Yet in his eyes shone a determined promise: no matter what he had to sacrifice, he would never let the dream of the woman he loved be abandoned. Headlights flashed across the Monza circuit as Lucien Deveraux hurtled his car through a tight curve. His heart pounded with each beat, yet the vision of Calista amid rolls of silk kept dragging him back to reality. When the checkered flag waved, Lucien gripped the steering wheel and exhaled. He had finished third. It was a solid result, enough to score points, but far from the position he had dreamed of. He pulled out his phone and tried to video call Calista, eager to see her smile to lift his spirits. Instead, Aunt Camille's weary face appeared on the screen. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Calista just learned someone wants to buy a large lot of our premium embroidered fabric for an early exhibition, but their bid is much lower than we expected. I'm very worried." Lucien nodded, though Calista's anxious expression was still invisible from Monza. He understood that Belle Étoffe was once again on the brink of risk. He whispered, "I will buy that entire lot at a higher price. No one will undercut all your hard work." Hearing that, Aunt Camille broke into tears of relief and promised to tell Calista not to worry. From Monza, Lucien immediately arranged a flight back to Lyon. He didn't even pause to celebrate his podium finish or answer questions from reporters. Rumors began: is the Deveraux Motors driver pulling out of the season early? But Lucien paid them no mind. His thoughts belonged only to Calista and the Renaissance collection that held so much of her passion. As his plane touched down at Lyons Airport, evening had descended, and gentle snowflakes drifted across the ancient city, creating a backdrop both beautiful and cold. Lucien rushed into a taxi bound for Belle Étoffe, wincing as icy gusts assaulted his hand when he opened the door. Inside the workshop, he found Aunt Camille and Louise had already tidied the space. Curtains were drawn back and warm lights glowed throughout the store, a beacon of comfort in the frigid night. Calista stood in the center of the room, surrounded by newly acquired fabrics and the nearly finished Renaissance pieces. Her eyes shimmered with fatigue but also relief, and when she saw Lucien, her lips curved in a small, grateful smile. "I couldn't wish for anything more than this moment." He stepped forward, pulling her into a tight embrace, breathing in the sweet scent of silk still clinging to her lips. Calista nuzzled her head against his shoulder, her eyes shining. I was so frightened that someone would snatch up that bid. I was afraid I wouldn't have enough fabric to complete Renaissance in time for Paris. Lucien kissed the top of her head, soothingly. I've already purchased that entire lot. Everything will be fine. You only need to focus on the hand embroideries, I'll handle the rest. Calista reached up to clasp his strong hand in hers, drawing warmth from his broad palm as she regained her balance. Thank you. I know no matter how hard it gets, you will always stand by me. The next morning, the two of them headed together to a silk mill on the outskirts of Lyon, one that supplied high-end materials to top fashion houses across Europe. The mill's director, an Italian named Vittorio, greeted them warmly and expressed his eagerness to help. Ms. Moreau's collection has the potential to bring Asian tradition to a wider audience. We are honored to support you fully. Beneath the sun streaming through the glass ceiling, Calista, Lucien, and Vittorio reviewed the order, adding more deep red silk and superfine embroidery thread. Vittorio's kindness moved Calista to tears, and she dared to imagine a grand Renaissance debut in illustrious Paris. Lucien stood by her side, his gaze full of pride and admiration. He knew how many trials this petite woman had overcome to safeguard her passion. Returning to Lyon, they made a stop at a riverside café overlooking the Rhône to plan their next steps. Calista mapped out the timeline, finalized the embroidery 2 weeks early, traveled to Paris a week before the show to prepare the runway, coordinate with stylists and the press. Lucien listened attentively, occasionally reminding her, "I'll be in the audience, your most fervent fan." Calista smiled and gently touched his cheek. "Don't forget you still have to focus on Le Mans. We have to stay healthy." At that moment, Aunt Camille brought over 2 steaming cups of chrysanthemum tea. The gentle fragrance wafted through the crisp air, prompting both Calista and Lucien to let out a relieved sigh. Calista raised her cup and softly said, "To a journey where passion and love walked together." Lucien tapped his cup against hers, his eyes brimming with promise, to the French Asian dream shining bright. In the days that followed, Belle Étoffe buzzed with renewed energy. Calista, her 2 assistants, and Aunt Camille worked tirelessly on the hand embroidery. Each gleaming gold stitch on the red silk gradually revealed the exquisite peony designs. Lucien managed to stop by occasionally, bearing news of rival drivers on the track and words of encouragement for Calista. One afternoon, they sat side by side at that old sewing machine, his hand trembling as he attempted a few stitches under Callista's gentle guidance. Both burst into laughter when his uneven rows emerged and Calista patiently corrected him. The afternoon sun painted the window with warm orange light, reflecting in their radiant eyes and erasing the exhaustion and tension of the past weeks. In that simple moment, Calista placed her hand on his chest and whispered, "Tomorrow I will send the full collection to Paris. You must win Le Mans." Lucien pulled her close and vowed, "I will do it for you, for our shared dream." Their hearts beat in unison, fueled by unwavering faith and hope as Renaissance prepared to take flight. The first days of June passed under the sweltering summer sun as Calista and the Belle Étoffe team hurried to finalize every last detail of the Renaissance collection. The small workshop behind the store had been completely renovated. A new, taller tin roof now let natural light flood into the embroidery room, making each stitch feel warm and alive. Calista sat at the embroidery frame, meticulously adjusting the size and placement of the peony motifs so they would sit perfectly centered on the garment's bodice. Beside her, Aunt Camille thoughtfully brought a bowl of herb-infused chicken soup, simple yet nourishing enough to keep Calista working. Calista took a sip of the steaming broth, inhaled the soothing herbal aroma, and felt reassured when she saw the rows of A-line Qipao dresses neatly arranged on mannequins, ready to be shipped. More than 800 kilometers away, in a small village near Le Mans, Lucien had just completed his final test laps in Deveraux Motors' number 47 race car. This season's Le Mans circuit glistened under dry sunshine. Oil films and worn tire grooves bore witness to decades of competition. Donning his helmet, Lucien eased the car backward onto the grid, revved the engine, and shot forward like an arrow leaving its bow. Each slippery corner and long straightaway set his heart pounding. Yet even amid that deafening roar, Calista's image, in her peony-embroidered Qipao, remained vivid in his mind. He gently tapped the brakes and pulled into the pit to catch his breath, then video-called Calista. On her screen, Calista appeared flushed from late nights and worry, her eyes rimmed red. She gripped the phone and spoke in a trembling voice, "Have you done the final test yet? I'm still waiting for news from Paris about the atmosphere before the show." Lucien nodded solemnly, trying to hide his concern. "The car feels great. I'll do my best to stay in the top 5. Rest assured, I trust you completely to handle everything in Paris." After the call, Lucien quickly donned his team jacket and strode out of the garage with resolute eyes, ignoring the curious stares of engineers and reporters. Meanwhile, in Paris, the city lights glowed like an immense silk tapestry draped along the Seine. Calista, Louise, and Etienne had rented a small room in the Moreau district to make it easier to move to the Renaissance runway venue. On a warm evening, they hired someone to fold each Qipao into a transparent protective bag, labeling the measurements for every model. The room contained only a small wooden table, yet it was filled with the scent of silk and the ink from newly printed posters. Calista sat down and studied the launch poster, her image in a deep red Qipao standing beside the Eiffel Tower, the background hazy under bursts of fireworks. The italicized words "Renaissance, the rebirth of tradition" moved her deeply. Louise gently smoothed the poster and murmured, "You've overcome so many challenges to get here. Everyone in Lyon is counting down this moment." Calista forced a smile, her nerves showing. "I still worry. Will the weather cooperate? Will the audience come?" Etienne tapped her shoulder reassuringly, "And Camille and I will handle everything. You just walk out there with confidence. Lucien must win Le Mans, and you must shine in Paris." The next morning, at the Palais de la Mode on the banks of the Seine, the air buzzed with excitement. Rows of chairs flanked the runway, and lush green trees framed the sides. Gentle background music played as camera crews arranged their equipment, and flashbulbs began to pop as journalists took their positions. A French stylist, Anton Dubois, greeted Calista with a professional smile. "We have only 3 hours left. All the garments and accessories are ready. Rest assured." Calista inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. Louise nimbly transported each Qipao to the racks backstage, while Etienne reviewed the script for each model, order of appearance, lighting cues, music cues. The ticking clock made Callista's heart race, but she reminded herself, "This is my moment to show the world the value and unbroken beauty of the Qipao." Meanwhile, hundreds of kilometers away between Lyon and Paris, Lucien entered the race team's control tent, his eyes fixed on the screen showing each driver's position. Behind him, Henri Deveraux stood with a stern expression, one hand tucked into his jacket. "Look," he said, "the entire world is watching. If you don't place well today, Deveraux Motors' reputation will wobble. That seamstress of yours cannot overshadow our family's influence." Lucien, wrinkling his brow in frustration, stared back with fierce determination. "Grandfather, she is not a prop for my victories. My feelings for her are what truly matter." As the race marshal lowered the green flag, the roar of the starter's horn echoed through the stands, and Lucien's number 47 car shot onto the track. The engine thundered in sync with Lucien's heartbeat as he poured everything into a breakthrough. In the first lap, he stayed glued to the leaders, weaving through a series of tight corners. By the second lap, his Italian rival, Marco Alessi, set an ambush in a sweeping turn and clipped Lucien's bumper, causing him to swerve. Lucien fought to retain control, stomped on the accelerator, and overtook Marco before he could correct his line. That lightning-fast duel had the crowd on its feet, but Lucien kept his focus. On the next lap, he held a steady pace, steering carefully as his tires cut across a slick patch of oil left from an earlier spill. As the laps wore on, the top 3 positions crystallized, Lucien had to meticulously navigate each dangerous moment to secure third place. Crossing the finish line, he claimed second, a remarkable achievement, but still short of the championship victory he coveted. Nevertheless, when his name and the Deveraux Motors team flashed on the leaderboard, Lucien knew he had fulfilled his responsibility. Immediately after stepping from the car, drenched in sweat, Lucien held up his phone and called Calista. On her end, she sat in a VIP seat alongside Anton and several fashion editors. Calista shouted joyfully into the camera, "Lucien finished second. He couldn't be here for the show, but he gave his all." Applause erupted around her. Calista quickly wiped away tears and added, "Did you hear that? He fought so bravely." Lucien managed a tired smile and gently pressed his hand against the screen as if caressing her. "You did amazing. Your Qipaos are phenomenal." Backstage, as the first model stepped onto the runway in a deep red Qipao, flashbulbs burst like fireworks. Behind her, other gowns followed in succession, set against a Franco-Asian medley of music. Spotlights cut through the gauzy fabric, making each peony motif shimmer, the silk swishing like a dewy ribbon. The audience gasped in admiration as reporters filmed the signature Rouge de Lion Qipao, the centerpiece of Renaissance. When the final model exited the stage, Calista's legs trembled as she emerged from behind the curtains to embrace Louise and Etienne. Flashbulbs ignited around them, and the crowd's roar threatened to overwhelm her, but at that moment, the jacket Lucien had sent arrived and draped over her shoulders, lending her strength. In that instant, she knew she had succeeded. She had not only brought the Qipao's legacy to the fashion capital of the world but had also proven a love that endured every storm. As the show concluded, Anton approached to offer congratulations, an inquisitive smile on his lips. "Calista, I believe this collection will resonate with fashionistas across Europe. I want to become the official stylist for your brand." Calista nodded, eyes misting with emotion. "I would be honored, Anton." Amid cheers from the photographers, she video called Lucien once more to recount every moment of the runway. Lucien nodded slowly, his warm voice resounding, "I'm so proud of you. We're writing a story of love and passion together." They exchanged smiles across the screen, their hearts beating in unison even as life's currents surged around them. After the Renaissance show in Paris, Calista and the Belle Étoffe team returned to Lyon in high spirits. Headlines spread quickly: Franco-Asian Qipao sensation at Palais de la Mode, young designer conquers the fashion capital. The congratulatory wave drowned out all the earlier malicious commentary. Even Henri Deveraux sent an email of praise: "Ms. Moreau, your achievement is admirable, bridging Deveraux family heritage with French style." Calista read the message, tears welling in her eyes before she slipped her phone into her pocket. She gazed out the open window at the clear blue sky, where late spring cherry blossoms still drifted down. She told herself, "All the hardships are behind me, but there is still so much to do." That evening, Calista visited the workshop and felt as if she had stepped into a trove of treasures. All the fabrics, sewing machines, and embroidery stations had been restored. Aunt Camille fetched a bottle of French red wine as a gift for her granddaughter. They sat at the wooden table, admiring the gleaming gold threads against the red silk, sharing stories of the journey they had just endured. Calista's voice trembled with emotion. "I still can't believe I did it." Aunt Camille stroked Calista's hair. "My little girl has weathered every storm. Now rest, for tomorrow we prepare for the Lyon showcase, our capsule edition Qipao collaboration with Deveraux Motors." Calista frowned thoughtfully. "That show is 1 week before Le Mans. Should I fly to Monaco to cheer for him?" In Lyon, news of Renaissance's triumph prompted the decision to stage a smaller showcase at l'Opéra National de Lyon. Lucien himself would take part, wearing his Deveraux Motors jacket, modeling the men's Qipao called Esprit de Course, blending couture with a dramatic drift on stage. The launch day arrived as swiftly as a gust of wind. Backstage at the opera, Calista bustled about ordering models, amateur racers to stride confidently as though they were on the track. Louise reminded her, 3 p.m. rehearsal, 4 p.m. dress rehearsal, 6 p.m. the show starts. Take care of yourself. Calista nodded, her eyes tired but resolute. I must make this show a success to prove our men's line is just as worthy. Outside, seats began filling, and some attendees arrived earlier than expected to preview the new designs. Meanwhile, at Le Mans, Lucien squeezed in a video call to Calista between practice laps. He appeared in his Deveraux Motors jacket, with a confident smile. I'm on lap 50. The track is still damp from last night's rain, but I've adjusted the tires and am running in the top 3. Calista beamed, her voice catching. The Lyon stage is already packed. I'm so excited for you to see it. Lucien grinned with a hint of tease. Wait until you see my drift. The audience won't be able to look away. After encouraging her, he hung up and focused on racing. Later, when Calista heard the prelude music fill the opera's sound system, she emerged from backstage, her heart pounding. Facing her was a sea of dazzling lights and thunderous applause from the audience. Calista inhaled deeply and stepped onto the runway, drawing back the drape to reveal the esprit de course men's Qipao displayed on circular platforms. A light rock beat began, and the male models strode out confidently, each wearing a form-fitting Qipao that accentuated their strong shoulders and sculpted physiques, evoking the professional racer's spirit. As the last model passed, Lucien took the stage under swirling lights and smoke in a matte black Qipao embroidered with white peonies at the chest, holding a red racing helmet. He walked deliberately before suddenly dropping to one knee, placing the helmet on a small pedestal, pulling out a blown-up map of the racetrack and pinning it to the backdrop, his gaze steely with determination. When the music swelled to its climax, Lucien flipped open his helmet, removed his gloves, and grabbed a microphone. The Qipao is not just for women, it is a symbol of pride and an unwavering spirit. Deveraux Motors is proud to partner with Belle Étoffe to elevate Franco-Asian culture onto the world stage. Applause erupted, and countless flashbulbs flickered. Calista, standing behind the curtain, tears of pride in her eyes, felt her heartbeat sync with the audience's excitement. Immediately afterward, the models continued their walk along the runway, with Lucien serving as the final showstopper. He walked deliberately to center stage, then suddenly performed a swift drift to the left, the silk swirled behind him like a living ribbon. As the race car imagery whizzed across the background screen, the audience gasped at this unprecedented fusion of fashion and motorsport. Calista watched Lucien with boundless pride, tears spilling down her cheeks. This is us, two hearts beating as one. The show concluded to thunderous applause, and Calista stepped out to join Lucien, arm in arm, bowing in gratitude to the cheering crowd. Flashbulbs continued to blaze, capturing the moment they stood together backstage, their hearts brimming with emotion. When the guests finally departed, Calista and Lucien walked hand in hand along the narrow street by the Rhône. Paris at night was quiet, a gentle breeze stirring their hair and carrying the scent of riverfront flowers. Calista leaned against Lucien's shoulder, her luggage of design sketches at her feet, their shared dream taking shape. Lucien whispered, "We conquered Le Mans, and now we've won Paris. You've made history." Calista replied, her voice soft but overflowing with love, "As long as you're by my side, I believe miracles are always waiting." Under the twinkling golden streetlights, their love continued to shine, braving every storm of rain, the fiery heat of the racetrack, and the glittering world of high fashion. After the Opera Lyon show, Calista and Lucien returned to Lyon feeling both elated and anxious. The overwhelming success of the event had attracted the attention of several potential investors, among them Véronique Morel, the founder of a high-end fashion chain in Paris, who expressed interest in buying a stake in Belle Étoffe and expanding the brand across Europe. Calista stood in the newly renovated upstairs office above the workshop, looking out the window as late afternoon sunlight sparkled on the remaining threads of the Renaissance collection. Aunt Camille squeezed her hand, her eyes glistening with pride. Softly, Calista said, "Auntie, I'm really worried. If I accept Madame Morel's offer, I'll have to share decision-making power. Will Belle Étoffe still retain its family identity? Camille smiled reassuringly. My dear, you're savvy enough to preserve tradition gracefully. As long as you trust your heart and passion, I believe you'll find a way. Calista nodded, her heart fluttering as she recalled the countless hours spent embroidering by hand and the sleepless nights fretting over harsh public opinion. Meanwhile, Lucien was fully focused on the final race of the season, 24-hour Le Mans, a grueling test of endurance and skill. Teams from around the world had descended upon the circuit, all yearning for victory, and he carried not only his own aspirations but also the reputation of Deveraux Motors. Before departing, he sat down for a serious conversation with his grandfather, Henri Deveraux. You have stirred up storms on the racetrack and within the family these past months, Henri said, but you have shown unwavering commitment to Calista. Now I accept this relationship, but you must prove your worth on the track. A first-place finish at Le Mans will silence all doubts. Lucien bowed his head. I understand, grandfather. I will give it my all. Henri nodded, his eyes shining with confidence, an unspoken approval for Lucien to pursue his love so long as he earned the prestige befitting the Deveraux name. On the day of Le Mans, the track lay glistening with early morning dew. Lucien concentrated entirely on the long straightaway leading to the pit lane. When the starter's horn sounded, engines roared like a gathering storm, tension crackling through the air. He launched forward, gripping the wheel tightly, his eyes following the red taillights of the cars ahead. In that moment, memories of Calista standing beneath the opera's grandstand surfaced, the lights, the cheers, and her radiant smile. He inhaled deeply, pressed the accelerator, and swung wide, fighting for every thousandth of a second against his Italian rival, Marco Alessi. The third corner was always decisive. Marco often tried to block Daniel Ricciardo there, hoping to impede Lucien's progress. But Lucien had prepared a strategy: enter the turn at an angle, use his refined drifting technique to maintain balance, and then break away decisively when Marco least expected it. Through the radio, the announcer's voice crackled, Deveraux has taken the lead. Le Mans awaits him. His heart pounded even harder. Despite his tires skidding through patches of leftover water, he handled the car calmly, downshifting, then flooring the pedal down the straight. With each lap, the number 47 car steadily closed the gap, slipping into the front pack. As the race neared its end, Marco intentionally nudged Lucien toward the guardrail at the Schoenfeld section, sending his front wheel teetering off the track. Spectators held their breath as Deveraux Motors' pit board flashed danger. Yet Lucien remained composed, using precise control to tap the brake, recover stability, and then speed back toward the pit lane. When the signal to refuel flashed, the pit crew leapt into action. In those 10 critical minutes, life and death hung in the balance. Lucien roared out of the pit box with only seconds separating him from Marco's beast. The following laps unfolded in frantic intensity, headlights pierced swirling dust, engines screamed, and the whole spectacle felt like a drama embodying steely resolve. In the final countdown, Lucien pushed himself to the limit, overtaking Marco just as the finish line emerged in the distance. The checkered flag sounded, and the grandstands exploded. Deveraux is the champion. Le Mans is his once again. Warm drops of sweat mixed with overwhelming joy on his brow. He bowed his head in gratitude to the heavens, picturing Calista waiting back in Lyon. The journey back to Lyon after such a long night of victory felt endless. Familiar streets of the old city glowed with soft golden lamplight, and moss-covered stone buildings resembled a timeless painting. Lucien drove his everyday car, his hands still trembling from adrenaline, yet his mind was already racing toward Belle Étoffe. As he neared the boutique, its lights still glowed and a window was ajar. He stopped the car, stepped out, and inhaled the warm blend of silk and dried lavender. In the dim, gentle darkness, Calista stood in the doorway, wearing a denim jacket, her black hair brushing her shoulders. When she saw him, tears silently cascaded down her cheeks, her face alight with joy and emotion. "You won." Lucien sprinted to her side, enfolding her in a fierce embrace, his sobs choking in the night. "You waited for me. I promise I'll never make you wait like that again." Calista melted into his arms, feeling his warmth and the powerful beat of the heart of the man she loved, her future husband. They spoke no more, simply holding one another amid the scent of silk and the gentle golden glow of Belle Étoffe's lights. Lyon's morning dawned peaceful, sunlight streaming through the windows of Belle Étoffe and falling upon pristine white fabrics, reminding Calista that she still needed to finalize the paperwork for opening the Paris branch. Today, she and Lucien would officially sign the cooperation agreement between Deveraux Motors and Belle Étoffe, marking the beginning of a new era for the brand. Calista awoke early, closing her eyes to steady her nerves. She descended the carpeted wooden stairs decorated with rose motifs, where Aunt Camille had prepared a tray of French rose tea. Camille smiled and placed a small pastry on the table, a special breakfast to wish you luck. Calista nodded, inhaled deeply, savoring the sweetness of the pastry and the gentle fragrance of tea, drawing renewed strength. Not far away, in Deveraux Motors headquarters, the auditorium glowed with solemn grandeur. A backdrop bore the Deveraux and Belle Étoffe logos alongside the words Cultural and Fashion Alliance 2025. The guest chairs were neatly arranged, and a red carpet extended along the aisle. Henri Deveraux, dressed in an elegant black suit, stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze expectant. Lucien emerged from the elevator, his face radiant as though he'd just awakened from a dream. He bowed to his father, then checked his watch, just 5 minutes to go. Nearby, a group of journalists quietly readied their cameras, poised for the press announcement. Lucien took a steadying breath, his eyes shifting to the wings where Calista would appear beside Henri. Meanwhile in Lyon, Calista walked briskly over cobblestones toward the train station, carrying a small suitcase filled with precious fabric samples and contract documents. On board the Orient Express, she gazed out the window, watching the lights along the Rhone's banks blink as the train departed. The journey to Paris would take about 4 hours, but her thoughts were taut with anticipation. She murmured to herself, everything must be perfect. Upon arriving at Gare de Lyon, Calista swiftly hailed a taxi to Deveraux Motors headquarters, smelling faint vanilla from the car's interior. She opened the final printed contract, clutching it to her chest as she stepped out and looked up at the glass building reflecting a sky dotted with white clouds. As soon as Calista pushed through the revolving door, Lucien dashed over and clasped her hand. "You made it." Calista managed a smile, her eyes shimmering with tears. "The most important moment of my life is waiting in there." Lucien nodded, walking beside her into the auditorium. Warm background music played as everyone turned toward the wings when Henri Deveraux emerged, balloons in white and red, symbols of the union between the two brands, floating behind him. He regarded Calista with thoughtful eyes before breaking into a gentle smile. "Ms. Moreau, you have persevered and proven your worth. Today, we officially sign this agreement." Calista bowed respectfully, picked up the golden fountain pen on the table, and signed at the Belle Étoffe end. Then she looked at Lucien and said, "I am honored to have the support of both families." Lucien smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder, his eyes alight with determination. After the signing ceremony, Henri presented Calista with a bouquet of white peonies, symbols of purity and courage. Photographers flooded in with cameras, asking Calista about her future development strategy. Confidently, she replied, "We will open 3 new branches in Milan, Barcelona, and London by the end of this year. We will also organize an annual exhibition called Fusion Esprit to showcase a line of Qipao infused with local styles in each city." Behind her, Lucien nodded thoughtfully. "I will accompany her at every stop, whether on the racetrack or the catwalk." Under thousands of flashing lights, Calista and Lucien exchanged grateful smiles, the smiles of two people who dared to pursue their passions and overcome every obstacle to write a love and career story blending French and Asian influences. That afternoon, When the guests departed, Calista and Lucien strolled through the small garden in front of the building. White peony buds were just beginning to open, their petals trembling in the gentle breeze. Lucien stopped, wrapped Calista in a warm embrace from behind, and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I wonder if I had never met you, would I ever have found myself?" Calista tilted her head and looked up at him. "You make me believe that when two hearts stand together, nothing can shake them." Their feet left impressions on the soft grass, facing a sunset in golden hues stretching across Paris's sky. In the distance, the Eiffel Tower glimmered with a golden light, heralding a future filled with hope. In that moment, they silently promised each other, no matter how many trials life would bring, they would walk side by side, holding hands as they continued writing their shared love story. Belle Étoffe and Deveraux, the tale where peony-embroidered Qipao met the roar of racing engines, a fusion of Asian and European cultures shining brightly together. A few months after the signing ceremony between Deveraux Motors and Belle Étoffe, Lyon slipped into autumn, its cobblestone streets threaded with golden and crimson leaves. Calista threw herself into finishing a new Qipao line called Aube d'Or, Golden Dawn, inspired by the blazing sunrise over the fields of Provence. In the small hand-embroidery room behind the boutique, pale sunlight poured in through the windows as 10 skilled hands tirelessly wove gold and silver threads into pristine white silk. Aunt Camille gently sorted each embroidered panel onto the sewing table. Camille smiled with relief as she watched the garments take shape, proud to see Belle Étoffe's workforce growing and its reputation spreading across Europe. Meanwhile, Lucien, fresh from defending his Le Mans championship, returned to Lyon with his racing laurels and congratulations from fans and pundits alike. Slipping on his familiar black leather jacket, he headed to the small garage next to Belle Étoffe, where he had designed custom helmet and glove motifs, peony details from the Esprit d'Aube Qipao line. Each brushstroke reflected a fusion of Calista's Asian-inspired elegance and the racer's rugged spirit, transforming the number 47 race car into something unmistakably unique. On the eve of the Aube d'Or fall-winter launch, Lucien arrived at the boutique at dawn. He set his helmet, dewy from the morning air, on the windowsill, then stepped inside. The soft tap of his hand on the embroidery frame made Calista smile with happiness. Among rows of Aube d'Or Qipao arranged like soldiers on parade, Calista exhaled softly as she examined each perfectly tailored gown. Beside her, Lucien gently brushed a glinting thread with his fingertip and said, "You did it. They're beautiful." Calista nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "Because you were by my side, I had the courage to keep going." A cool breeze drifted through the window, carrying the last cherry blossoms of the season and seeming to share in their joy. Outside, Lyon's sky had turned a pale rosy hue, promising a crisp autumn day. That afternoon at the Palais des Congrès de Lyon, Aube d'Or was unveiled before a crowd of press and partners from Milan, London, and Tokyo. As the stage lights snapped on, the auditorium glowed in welcome. Models glided down the runway wearing ivory Qipao embroidered with metallic peonies, each meticulous seam sparkling against the fabric. A violin's soaring melody intertwined with a delicate piano arrangement, creating a captivating Franco-Chinese symphony. In the VIP section, Henri Deveraux sat between Aunt Camille and Grandma Camille, his face alight with pride as he witnessed the successful union of Asian and European family craftsmanship transcending borders. Just as the first model stepped forward, a backstage video montage rolled on the big screen, capturing Calista and her team of seamstresses erupting in laughter as the old sewing machine clicked away, and Lucien weaving among them, comforting Calista's back when the pre-show bell rang. Reporters swarmed, snapping photos and shooting interviews. A Japanese investor whispered an invitation for Calista to open a small Tokyo branch, while an Italian partner nodded approvingly at the idea of collaborating on the Esprit de Course racing-inspired Qipao line for Monza. Calista paused to meet Lucien's trusting gaze. "I can do even more," she said. He simply smiled warmly, fueling her confidence. As the show drew to a close, Calista and Lucien stepped onto the stage hand in hand, bowing to sustained applause. Lion's night felt more romantic than ever. City lights shimmered on the Rhône like a ballroom of light. Together, they strolled down the brick-paved street and paused at a small café bearing the familiar sign tea and profiteroles. Calista ordered 2 café au lait and placed her hand over a lavender-filled cream puff, Lucien's favorite. Lucien smiled softly, set his hand over hers, and kissed her knuckles. "Tomorrow is my birthday. Do you have any special plans for me?" Calista tilted her head, her eyes shining. "We'll meet your family at Deveraux Chateau. I've prepared a Qipao called Ciel d'automne, autumn sky, for your mother. The most meaningful birthday gift is simply being by your side." Lucien blinked in surprise, then his face lit up. "You are the greatest gift of all." They sipped their warm coffee as faint accordion music drifted from a corner of the café. The next morning, Calista and Lucien set out for Deveraux Chateau, nestled among the hills on Lyon's outskirts. The castle's ancient facade glowed in autumn light, its front garden blooming in hydrangeas and climbing roses. In the grand hall, Genevieve Deveraux awaited them, embracing her son and future daughter-in-law with open arms. She beamed as she took in Calista's amber-brown qipao, white peony motifs delicately embroidered along the collar. "Calista, you look like autumn's golden princess," Genevieve exclaimed joyfully. She handed Calista a dark blue silk box. Inside lay a pearl necklace featuring a tiny peony gemstone, symbolizing love and purity. Overcome, Calista thanked her and pressed a kiss to Genevieve's cheek. At the warm family dinner, tales of their journey, from racetrack triumphs to the cozy sewing quarters, were shared with heartfelt laughter. Raising his glass of red wine, Henri spoke in a rich baritone, "Today, we not only celebrate Lucien's birthday but also welcome Calista into the Deveraux family. Together, we shall build dreams that remain unfinished." Lucien smiled quietly, looked into Calista's eyes, and gently squeezed her hand. Her heart fluttered as his touch fueled her warmth. Laughter rang through the halls of the chateau, the bond between the two families making the evening even more joyous. Later that night, when the guests had departed and candlelight flickered over the banquet table, Calista and Lucien stepped onto the balcony overlooking the castle grounds. Soft golden light spilled through the window onto marble floors, creating a storybook scene. Lucien gently knelt, drawing from his pocket a small black velvet box. Calista's breath caught as he lifted the lid to reveal a diamond peony-engraved ring, sparkling like a star in the night. "Calista Moreau, will you marry me?" he asked, his voice trembling but sincere. Bathed in candlelight, Calista could only nod, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "You made me believe and dreams come true." Lucien slid the ring onto her left finger and rose to embrace her. The flickering flames seemed to applaud them, and a nightingale's song soared into the quiet, celebrating two souls who had found each other. Thus concluded the chapter of the Qipao Beauty and the Famous Racer, a long path of dreams and trials that now opened onto a brilliant future, brimming with promises of family happiness, new races on the track, and Franco-Asian Qipao that would continue to shine on all 5 continents.